So after 1,000 regular wingsuit flights,
Yes.
and after a whole bunch of base jumping with a parachute flights,
Yep.
you now get to the point where you're going to base jump in the suit.
Yes.
Talk to us about that. What are the parameters? You have to have some sort of distance over altitude, I would think. You're calculating that. You want to make sure it's somewhat safe.
Yes.
How do you tell us about that, the high end of the pinnacle here?
Okay. So in the beginning, when you're doing your first wingsuit base jumps, and I mean, do you want me to talk about when I was doing it back when nobody knew anything, or do you want to talk about now when we actually know something about how it's done? Because they're two different things. I'll talk about how we know it's done now, because that's probably more relevant and means more. Because what I was doing was obviously insane and it doesn't relate to anything today. But what happens now is we know certain cliffs. There's certain places in the world that are good for training wingsuit pilots. We know the altitudes, because what's really important in the beginning when you're learning to fly a wingsuit is having a very large cliff, right? So you have time. The more altitude you have, the more time you have for making mistakes. So someone who's really new makes mistakes. That's just all there is to it. You know, they don't know yet how to fly a wingsuit off of a cliff. They don't know what it's going to be like that jumping off into dead air with all that fabric. So ordinarily how you would begin that is you would first take them to a hot air balloon. Okay, so now, because they're used to flying a wingsuit now out of an airplane. Let's just say you've got someone who's got 1,000 wingsuit skydives. They're proficient in a wingsuit. They know how a wingsuit flies. They know how to flare a wingsuit. They know how to deploy the parachute properly. All of that's in the bag. They've got that. Now, the new thing that they don't have is what is it like to jump with a wingsuit into dead air, right? Where you don't have, because when you get out of an airplane, you already have 100 miles an hour of wind. So you're jumping out, you're already good. You've got air to control the suit. When you're jumping into dead air, there's no air to control, and you can basically tumble. If people don't do it properly, they can go head down, which then forces them where the wind hits the back and pushes them back into the mountain. So that's bad. You want to avoid that. So what happens is you first take them to a balloon jump. So same thing, you go 4,000 feet. So it's kind of a skydive. They've got the altitude. They've got the time. They can make a mistake and still deploy a parachute. They still can use a reserve. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's still safe-ish. It's in the relatively safe. It's a relatively safe. So then they exit. And then basically that's where you do your first training. Then when you see from the hot air balloon that they've got their exit nailed and that they're going to be safe-ish, then you can take them to a cliff. And there's multiple cliffs around the world that are really good for your first wingsuit base jump. One is in Italy called Arco. One is in Norway called Girard. Those are the two best locations on planet Earth to take a student wingsuit pilot for their first jumps, because you have 3,000 foot cliffs with massive time to like make little mistakes and still survive.